My name is Jordan Wells. I'm 38 years old. For 6 years, I worked at a company where my ideas were always a little too much, and my voice was always just a little too loud. I wasn't rude. I wasn't reckless. I just saw what they didn't want to admit, that their system was broken, their leadership tired, and their success built on people like me, people they never intended to promote, people they expected to stay quiet. I started as a contractor, fresh out of a layoff, grateful for the paycheck and the stability. But over time, I saw the cracks. I watched people fail upward while others like me, competent, sharp, and invisible, carried the weight. Meetings would happen where I wasn't invited, even if the project had my fingerprints all over it. And when I finally spoke up, the response was always the same. Just stay in your lane. Be grateful you're even here. That phrase haunted me, be grateful, as if opportunity were a favor. As if my work wasn't the very engine moving their success forward. I remember one executive laughing in front of the team and saying, "Jordan's got hustle, but not leadership energy." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because in that moment I learned the value of silence, not submission, calculation. They thought they were pushing me down. What they didn't realize was that they were giving me fuel. So I started learning more than just my job. I watched board meetings, researched private equity, took quiet notes on everything, profits, gaps, leadership weaknesses. I listened when they gossiped about the CEO's burnout and the founder's desperation for new funding. They thought I was invisible. I was studying. Then came the opportunity, a whispered rumor that the company was considering a partial sale to survive a financial dip. Most of them panicked. I smiled, because what they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 2 years. I had partners, I had capital, and I had the one thing they never gave me credit for, a plan. I didn't sleep much in the weeks that followed. Not because I was worried, because I was ready. Everything I had quietly studied about this company, every late-night spreadsheet, every whispered complaint from coworkers, every system flaw I observed but never reported, it had all become my blueprint. And now, I was going to use it. Not to destroy the company, but to rebuild it without the arrogance. My investment partner was an old friend from college, someone who believed in me long before anyone in that office ever did. He ran a fund that specialized in acquiring undervalued mid-sized companies. I brought him the pitch. I laid it all out. The growth potential, the outdated leadership, the tired structure. He was in within a week. And just like that, I went from being that guy in operations to the silent name behind the acquisition offer. The purchase was structured through a holding firm, which meant no one knew it was me. Not yet. They received a letter, cold and professional, expressing interest in a majority stake buyout. Management panicked. Layoffs were whispered. The founder started sweating during meetings. Suddenly, the same executives who used to ignore my emails were working weekends, trying to save their own necks. They didn't know the storm was coming from inside the building. One afternoon, I walked past the executive boardroom as they argued about the offer. I kept my head down, holding a coffee cup like I always did. One of them scoffed, "We can't sell. The new owners will probably gut the place." I smiled quietly to myself because I had no intention of gutting it. I just wanted to give the company the leadership it deserved. And yes, that meant removing a few toxic names from their thrones. A week later, the sale went through. Smooth, clean, legally sound. The company was mine. Majority control, voting rights, everything. Still, I didn't say a word. Not yet. I wanted them to feel the silence, the uncertainty, the shift in air, because people like that, they never look down long enough to notice the ground changing beneath them. Then came the email. All employees are required to attend an all-hands meeting this Friday for a message from the new owner. The entire office buzzed. Slack messages flew. Rumors filled the halls. I kept my face calm, my tone measured. I waited, because Friday was coming, and with it, the truth they never saw coming. Friday arrived like thunder in a clear sky. People came in early, dressed sharp, nervous laughter echoing through the halls. I sat at my usual desk that morning, same seat, same mug, same low profile. A few coworkers looked at me and joked, "You ready for the new boss?" I just smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I think today's gonna be interesting." The meeting was held in the main conference room, a place I'd been inside a dozen times, but never once from the head of the table. I usually sat near the corner, near the whiteboard, or the coffee pot. Today, I walked in last. People barely noticed until I didn't stop at the seats in the back. I walked straight to the front. I watched their faces shift from confusion to silence to realization. I stood behind the podium, cleared my throat. "I won't take too much of your time," I began. "You've all been wondering who the new owner is." A few chuckles, some folded arms. I nodded. "You already know him. You've worked with him. Maybe you ignored him. Maybe you underestimated him." Then I paused and looked directly at the VP, who once told me to stay in my lane. "He sat right here with you, for years." I let the moment hang, then said the words that would echo for a long time. "My name is Jordan Wells, and I now own this company." Silence, total, absolute. The kind of stillness you only hear when egos are breaking inside people's heads. Some jaws dropped. One executive's face turned ghost white. A few gasped. A few looked down. They knew, instantly, what they'd done, and who they'd done it to. I continued calmly. "This won't be a hostile takeover, but it will be a necessary transformation. Some of you have been overpaid for underperformance. Some of you criminally undervalued. That stops today." Eyes darted across the room. Those who had looked down on me now avoided my gaze, and those who had worked quietly, kindly. I looked at them, nodded once. A promise. Then I turned to the team and said something I'd waited years to say. I was told to stay quiet and be grateful, so I stayed quiet. And I got to work. And now, I own the table they never wanted to give me a seat at. I walked out of that room without raising my voice. I didn't need to. Power doesn't shout, it just arrives and stands still. After that meeting, the air in the building shifted like a season turning. People walked differently, not because I demanded it, but because the hierarchy had cracked. The ones who used to strut through the halls now glanced over their shoulders, and the ones who used to be invisible started to sit up straighter. That, to me, was the win. Not control, not dominance, restoration. I didn't fire everyone. I didn't need a spectacle. I called in 3 people, quietly, one-on-one. All 3 had laughed at me in meetings, cut my ideas short, spoken about me like I wasn't in the room. I didn't lecture them. I just slid their severance packets across the table and said, "You deserve a fresh start somewhere you feel in control again. No yelling, no drama. Just closure they never expected." But I also promoted 3 others. The junior analyst, who always brought extra ideas. The shy designer, who never interrupted but always delivered brilliance. And the receptionist, who treated every person who walked in like they mattered. I gave them titles, raises, voice, because I remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, and I would not let that cycle continue under my name. Olivia, the executive who once told me, "Don't aim too high, this isn't your lane," avoided eye contact for weeks. She kept her head down in meetings, tried to be helpful, even asked for my input. It was almost sad. But I didn't mock her. I didn't mention the past. I didn't need to. She already knew the moment she heard me speak at that podium. The old power dynamic was gone, replaced by something she'd never understood. Earned respect. Our founder, the one who once signed my contractor agreement and forgot my name twice, sent me a letter. I misjudged you. I'm glad you saved what we couldn't. I folded the letter, didn't frame it, just put it away, because I didn't need validation. I had validation. The moment I chose action over anger, strategy over emotion, the moment I stopped waiting for permission to lead. And in all of this, the meetings, the promotions, the departures, I never raised my voice. I never called anyone out by name. Because my victory wasn't about their defeat. It was about proving to myself most of all that the ones they tell to stay quiet and be grateful are often the ones carrying the blueprint for something better. Months passed, and the transformation was undeniable. Revenue climbed, staff turnover dropped. People started speaking up more, not out of fear, but out of purpose. The culture was shifting from fear-driven silence to contribution. It was everything I had hoped for when I first joined the company, back when no one asked for my opinion. Now, those same voices that were once quiet had room to rise, and they did. I took a different approach to leadership. I didn't sit behind closed doors. I walked the floors. I listened. I asked questions. I remembered names. I remembered birthdays. I spoke less and heard more, because I knew what it was like to be on the receiving end of silence, not the kind that comforts, but the kind that erases. I vowed never to let that happen again to anyone under my roof. Some of the old leadership didn't last long. They couldn't adapt to a culture where titles didn't guarantee respect. They missed the old hierarchy, the comfort of being untouchable, but the new team, they thrived. We launched 2 new products in under a year, doubled client retention, and opened a mentorship initiative that brought in some of the brightest interns I'd ever seen. The success spoke for itself, quietly consistent. One day, a junior employee came up to me after a team huddle. He said, "It means a lot that you sit with us instead of above us." That stuck with me, because for years, I sat below people who never saw me. And now, as the owner, I understood the real weight of leadership. Not in control, but in visibility, seeing people, trusting them, and giving them a place to build something alongside you, not beneath you. I was invited to speak at a conference shortly after. On stage, I told the story, not to shame the company's past, but to illuminate what's possible when silence is used, not for hiding, but for building. I ended the talk with a line that had lived inside me for years. They told me to stay quiet and be grateful, so I stayed quiet and built something worth being grateful for. The room stood in applause, not because they saw a CEO, but because they saw someone who remembered the climb. And that was the greatest win of all. I hadn't just bought a company. I had rewritten the rules that once kept me small. And in doing so, I hadn't just claimed a title. I had created a legacy, one that wasn't built on revenge, but on reconstruction, one that said, you can rise without stepping on others. And that silence, when paired with purpose, speaks louder than any boardroom shout ever could. A year after the buyout, I made the decision to step back, not because I was burned out, but because I had done what I came to do. The company no longer needed my silence or my strategy to survive. It had a voice now, a team, a rhythm, a culture that respected the people who kept the wheels turning. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything anymore. I didn't announce my exit with a press release or a farewell tour. I gathered the team, thanked them, and introduced the new leadership, a woman who started at the front desk and rose through talent, not titles. I watched the room light up for her, and in that moment, I realized something. True leadership isn't about being needed forever. It's about creating something that outgrows you, that thrives without you, that remembers you not for your power, but your presence. People ask me if I regret not confronting the ones who tried to hold me down, the executives who laughed at my ideas, the founders who dismissed me. And the truth is, I don't. I let them sit with their own echoes, because the most haunting thing in the world for someone who ignored you is realizing you were the one who built the floor beneath their feet. Quietly, complete. Olivia, the one who told me to stay in my lane, now teaches workshops on humility and leadership. I never called her out, never reminded her, but I think she remembers. Every time she signs in, every time she tells her story, somewhere in the back of her mind, she knows who set the stage for her second chance. And maybe that's enough. I live differently now. I don't check metrics every hour. I don't chase approval. I invest. I read. I mentor quietly. I sit by the water in the mornings and remember what it felt like to have no voice. And then I remember how powerful it is to walk away with peace in your chest, clarity in your eyes, and nothing left to prove. My name is Jordan Wells. They told me to stay quiet and be grateful. So I stayed quiet. I worked. I learned. I bought the company. And when it was time, I left without a sound. Because sometimes the loudest legacy is the one you leave behind in silence.